Sally Field recently gave an interview where she straight-up named the meanest and most hurtful people she ever met in her entire job. These weren't just random mean things she said. They were based on real stuff that happened to her, moments she watched, and bad ways people acted that Sally saw over many years in the movie business. So, who were these people? Why did someone as good and honest as Sally Field feel she had to write down these terrible secrets? And what bad stuff were these stars hiding behind the nice pictures they showed the world? To answer everything, let's start with the very first person on Sally's list, the one she thought was the most sneaky and fake of them all, Tom Hanks. 1. Tom Hanks, the big faker behind the regular nice guy act. Tom Hanks, who everyone loves for movies like Forrest Gump, Cast Away, and Saving Private Ryan, made himself look like the nicest guy in Hollywood. But in Sally Field's secret notebooks, behind that carefully built nice face was a mean trickster who would do anything to control his job and the jobs of people around him. In 1989, when they were making a big serious movie, Hanks purposely ruined another actor's performance by asking for certain script changes that would make his own part look bigger and more amazing. Sally saw this happen and wrote about how Hanks would always try to hurt anyone he thought was a threat to his fame. He would trick the movie bosses into thinking other actors weren't good enough, making sure they got fired from the movie without letting them stick up for themselves. Sally wrote about one extra mean time where Hanks hinted that a really talented girl co-star wasn't prepared, putting bad ideas in the director's head that eventually made the girl get replaced. What bothered Sally the most was how Hanks could keep looking nice in public while he did all these tricks super carefully. She wrote a lot about how he used his fame as America's sweetheart to lie to the movie bosses and directors, making them believe his version of the story was the truth. He would smile while he was completely destroying someone's career. His nice, warm manner never changed, even as he gave the worst professional news. When no one was watching, Hanks was not the friendly, easy-to-talk-to person the world knew. He was scheming, cold, and totally set on staying at the top no matter what. Sally noticed his special skill for making people feel like his victims were the ones causing trouble, never letting the real story show that he was the one who ruined their job. 2. Robin Williams, the darkness hidden behind a funny face. Robin Williams acted like a happy, fun comedian whose amazing talent came from a real place of warmth and being generous. However, Sally Field's personal stories show a very worried and troubled person who used jokes to be both a shield and a weapon. According to her notebooks, Williams often used his jokes to make fun of and embarrass the people around him, aiming at people on set who were having a hard time with jokes that hurt much deeper than the laughter showed. Sally wrote about times where Williams would make fun of the crew without mercy, using his smart mouth to destroy their confidence, and how they felt about themselves without giving them any chance to fight back or feel better. She saw him make fun of actresses he was working with in front of everyone, creating a feeling of fear and worry on set where people never knew when they might be the target of his meanness that he called comedy. What Sally found most upsetting was Williams's way of making meanness seem funny, of laughing away his own bad behavior by saying it was just part of being a comedian, like being funny somehow made it okay to be cruel. He would trick situations to make people having a hard time feel alone, then use humor to hide his tracks, making sure anyone who complained would be made to look like they didn't get the joke instead of being rightfully hurt. His friendships with co-stars were often more like business deals than real friendships, and he was famous for making people around him work hard to support his feelings while he gave nothing real back. Sally noticed how Williams would gather information about what made people feel insecure and weak, then use that knowledge like a weapon through his comedy, making jokes that cut exactly where he knew they would hurt the most. Sally noted that Williams's personal struggles with drinking and drugs made him more and more unstable and hard to guess, leading to angry, explosive moments that didn't match his public image of being kind and caring. She wrote about times where his moods changed so fast that people truly didn't know if they would meet the charming performer or the mean, angry version of him. 3. Burt Reynolds, the giant ego that hurt everyone nearby. Burt Reynolds took over the screen with a power and appeal that pulled people toward him like a moth to a light. But Sally Field wrote in He are notebooks about a man completely full of such a huge ego and being unsure of himself that he became a destructive force to anyone near him. Reynolds needed to be told he was great and okay all the time. And when he didn't get it, his actions became meaner and more insulting. Sally wrote a lot about how Reynolds treated his female co-stars, describing a pattern of tricking and controlling that was much worse than typical Hollywood power games. He would purposely flirt with and charm actresses, then coldly dump them once he had proven his power over them, leaving them very sad and hurt and with damaged careers. His need to be the main person everyone looked at was so big that he would ruin other actors' scenes to make sure he remained the focus, even if it meant destroying a potentially brilliant moment of teamwork. During filming, Reynolds would demand script changes that made his character better while making others worse, rewriting scenes to make himself look more heroic and smart. Sally wrote about one time where Reynolds insisted a brilliant scene be cut completely because he felt the actress's big moment stole the show from his own character's story. He used his charm like a weapon to get what he wanted, then became very mean and cruel when people didn't meet his super high standards. Sally wrote about his habit of embarrassing directors and producers in front of everyone who questioned his choices, using his star power to scare them into doing what he wanted. Reynolds's meanness was especially aimed at people he thought were weaker or less important, enjoying their discomfort and worry, often laughing openly at people feeling stressed. 4. Julia Roberts, the careful charm of fooling people's feelings. Julia Roberts built her job on being America's sweetheart. The relatable girl next door who was also super beautiful and talented. But in her secret notebooks, Sally Field showed a totally different person. Someone who used her charm and nicely built popularity as weapons to get exactly what she wanted. Roberts was a master trickster who could change her personality in a second, becoming either the most wonderful person on set or the coldest, most cutting person you could imagine, depending on what the moment needed. Sally wrote about how Roberts would pretend to be friends with actresses with what seemed like real feelings, then use that friendship like a weapon by sharing personal secrets and info with the movie bosses to hurt her new friends' chances. She would invent long stories about other people's bad behavior at work or their unstable feelings, planting doubts that would grow until those people found themselves cut off from opportunities and unable to get jobs in the industry. Roberts was very careful about keeping her image clean, which meant anyone who could possibly ruin it had to be carefully handled or kicked out of her life. Sally watched Roberts purposely ruin a younger actress's career because she felt scared of her potential, setting up a campaign of whispers and rumors meant to make that actress seem untrustworthy. Roberts would spread rumors, complain to directors, and systematically make the person feel alone until they were forced off the project or chose to leave to escape the bad and mean environment. Sally wrote that Roberts's tricks were so clever that the people being targeted often blamed themselves, believing Roberts's story instead of realizing they were being purposefully hurt. What Sally found most upsetting was Roberts's total lack of feeling bad. Her ability to smile and accept an award while knowing the truth about her hurtful actions, never showing even a second of guilt or care for the people she had harmed while becoming famous. 5. Dolly Parton, the sweetness hiding a fierce desire to win. Dolly Parton showed the world an image of goodness, faith, and real kindness. someone who seemed to actually care about people and their well-being. Yet in her very private moments, as Sally Field wrote, Parton was a ruthless businesswoman willing to take advantage of anyone and anything to grow her empire and stay in charge. According to Sally, Parton's super sweet public look hit a person who was incredibly calculating and who saw people as tools to be used or thrown away based purely on if they were helpful. She would systematically get value from employees, paying them very little while getting the most work and loyalty possible, then replacing them with younger, cheaper people the moment they stopped doing exactly what she wanted. Parton was famous for making big public displays of charity and giving, which Sally recognized as pure acting designed to keep her image up. While her private behavior told a completely different story, she would promise opportunities to people, keeping their hopes up, then dump them the moment they were no longer helpful, never saying sorry for the promises she had made. Sally wrote about Parton's tricks with the media and public opinion with almost scientific precision, noting how Parton had planned every part of her image to look relatable and real while being totally made up and planned. Behind closed doors, Parton looked down on those below her, was patronizing about their dreams, and was absolutely cruel in her business dealings. Sally witnessed Parton embarrass employees in front of everyone, then appear on TV with a worried look, suggesting the employees had misunderstood her intentions. She saw kindness as a tool for tricking people rather than a real feeling of care, and she used it strategically to get what she wanted from people. 6. Shirley MacLaine, the fake smart bully. Shirley MacLaine created an image of being worldly, enlightened, and very spiritual. A woman who had moved past the shallow, greedy side of Hollywood through her intelligence and knowing herself. However, Sally Field's notebooks painted a totally different picture of someone using her pretend intelligence and spiritual ideas as excuses for meanness and trickery. MacLaine was super arrogant about how much smarter and more developed she thought she was, constantly putting down those she thought were less evolved or smart. According to Sally, MacLaine would use fake smart talk and spiritual words to make her increasingly wild and hurtful behavior seem okay, insisting that people simply didn't have the awareness to understand her actions. She would embarrass people in front of everyone for not agreeing with her specific way of seeing the world, ignoring their worries and views as coming from a place of not knowing things and not being spiritually mature. Sally wrote about MacLaine's habit of surrounding herself with people who would agree with her every wish while she purposely pushed away anyone who could question her thinking or decisions. MacLaine's treatment of the crew was famously disrespectful and looking down on them, with Sally watching times where MacLaine would literally laugh at people's real concerns about working conditions or being treated fairly. Sally wrote about how MacLaine would bring up spiritual rules to make it okay for her to refuse to pay people fairly or give basic working conditions, suggesting that money worries were beneath an evolved awareness. She used her intelligence and supposed spiritual authority as a weapon to stay in control of every situation, refusing to admit the harm she caused, and instead making criticism seem like proof of others not being enlightened enough. 7. Olympia Dukakis, the tricky grandmother figure. Olympia Dukakis created a public image as the wise, caring older person of Hollywood, the grandmother figure everyone could trust and respect. Yet Sally Field's private stories revealed someone who used this image as a weapon to trick people who were vulnerable, especially younger actresses looking for advice and help. According to Sally, Dukakis would act like a mentor and trusted friend, getting people's trust and secrets only to use that trust for her own benefit and to get ahead. She would share people's secrets with the movie bosses and directors, using private information like money to keep her power and importance in the industry. Dukakis was famously cruel beneath her warm outside, mocking people's dreams when their backs were turned, and dismissing their talents with cutting comments that sounded like wisdom and protective concern. Sally wrote about Dukakis' habit of publicly undermining younger actresses during interviews, suggesting they weren't talented or professional while keeping a worried, protective tone that made it impossible to call out her meanness without seeming rude. Dukakis would form intense relationships with people, making them feel like they needed her and owed her, then suddenly stop being nice if they failed to meet her expectations, or if they became bad for her image or career. Sally noticed how Dukakis would make these sudden rejections seem like the other person's fault, suggesting they had disappointed her or failed to reach their potential. Her greatest power was her ability to make people doubt what they knew was true and feel guilty for questioning why she did things, making victims believe they had caused the harm because of their own flaws. 8. Daryl Hannah, the Ice Queen's calculated meanness. Daryl Hannah showed an image of delicate beauty and artistic feelings. Someone whose talents seemed to come from a place of real, deep emotion and honesty. But Sally Field watched a person who was deeply planned out and who used her pretend vulnerability and artistic nature as a cover for trickery and cruelty. Hannah was very careful about controlling her image and her friendships, and she became very hostile toward anyone who threatened her story or questioned her actions. According to Sally, Hannah would make friends with other actors to create a team against people they saw as enemies. But she would quickly betray these friends if it helped her. She used rumors and gossip like a purposely spreading information meant to ruin other people's reputations and job chances. Hannah was known for refusing to give credit to people she worked with, insisting that every success was entirely her own achievement, and she would publicly make less important the work of directors, writers, and co-stars. Sally wrote about Hannah's habit of chasing after people for friendships and projects, then coldly discarding them when she had gotten what she wanted from them. Her treatment of the crew was famously disrespectful, with Hannah seeing technical staff as barely worth a nod. Sally watched Hannah talk down to makeup artists and costume designers, treating them as if they were somehow beneath her in smarts and art. What disturbed Sally most was Hannah's complete lack of taking responsibility, her ability to cause significant harm while totally believing in her own goodness and artistic honesty. 9. Daniel Day-Lewis, the method tyrant. Daniel Day-Lewis built a reputation as a serious, dedicated actor whose commitment to his work was uncompromising and amazing. Someone willing to sacrifice everything for a real artistic performance. Yet, in Sally Field's private observations, this same commitment became an excuse for increasingly wild and abusive behavior toward everyone around him. According to Sally, Day-Lewis would use his method acting approach as an excuse to be cruel, dismissive, and entirely focused on himself on set. He would demand that everyone adjust to his process no matter how it affected their own work needs or personal well-being. Day-Lewis would yell at directors and camera people if their work didn't match his specific idea, scolding them for lack of talent or understanding. He was known for creating mean working environments where people were super careful trying to keep him focused and protect his process. Sally wrote about his habit of verbally abusing co-stars, delivered with the belief that his criticism was coming from a place of artistic honesty rather than personal meanness. Sally watched Day-Lewis yell at an actress over a tiny acting choice, then claim he was simply giving honest artistic advice. Day-Lewis was incredibly controlling, demanding script changes, director choices, and casting decisions based on his narrow way of seeing the material. He would refuse to stop acting like his character between takes, staying in his method persona, even when it meant ignoring exhausted crew members or co-stars trying to connect. His arrogance about his own talent and understanding of human nature was extraordinary, and he showed absolutely no awareness of the damage his behavior caused to the people around him. 10. Tommy Lee Jones, the angry perfectionist. Tommy Lee Jones presented himself as a serious actor and director, someone with super high standards and real artistic honesty, someone whose intensity came from his passion for excellence. Yet Sally Field wrote about a man whose perfectionism was actually a cover for anger problems and contempt toward people he thought couldn't meet his impossible standards. According to Sally, Jones would become verbally abusive when people made mistakes or didn't perform the way he wanted. He would yell, insult, and publicly embarrass actors and crew members, using his reputation for excellence as an excuse for behavior that went too far into abuse. Jones was known for his refusal to show appreciation or acknowledge other people's work, seeing recognition of others as somehow making his own achievements smaller. He was meticulous about creating a culture of fear on his sets, where people worked frantically to guess what he needed and avoid triggering his famous temper. Sally watched Jones purposely exclude certain people from opportunities based on personal dislikes, using his power to ensure they would not advance their careers. He would spread vicious rumors about people's abilities and professional trustworthiness, ruining them with producers and directors. Jones's treatment of female cast and crew members was particularly famously disrespectful, and looking down on them, with Sally writing about several times where he made inappropriate comments or treated women as less smart. His belief in his own superiority was absolute and unshakable. 11. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the tricky progressive. Joseph Gordon-Levitt carefully made himself look like a progressive, thoughtful actor deeply committed to social fairness and good rules. Someone whose values meant he genuinely cared for people around him. However, Sally Field's private stories revealed someone who used these principles as weapons to control others and make his own abusive behavior seem okay. According to Sally, Gordon-Levitt would use progressive talk and social justice language to trick vulnerable people into doing what he wanted, framing any refusal as a moral mistake or lack of awareness. He would publicly call out what he saw as failures in other people's ethics, destroying reputations and careers with the belief that he was doing a moral service. Sally wrote about his habit of creating rankings where people who agreed with his specific worldview were treated better, while those who questioned him were cut off from opportunities and publicly embarrassed. Gordon-Levitt was famous for getting free labor or unfair deals from people by making them seem like necessary sacrifices for the greater good or for important art. He would volunteer to advise younger people, then use that position to get emotional and professional work from them while giving nothing back. His greatest trick lay in his ability to make people feel guilty for protecting their own personal limits or interests, convincing them that selfishness was the real moral flaw. Sally watched Gordon-Levitt systematically isolate people who questioned him, turning colleagues against them by suggesting they lacked a proper ethical foundation. 12. Pierce Brosnan, the charming predator. Pierce Brosnan used his status as a leading man to create an image of charm, sophistication, and romantic appeal, building a persona of the perfect gentleman, both on screen and seemingly in private. Yet, Sally Field wrote about a deeply deceptive individual who used his charm as a way to trick and take advantage of people. According to Sally, Brosnan's main trick was creating situations where people felt like they owed him, having benefited from his name or his support, only to demand those debts back in ways that hurt their professional honesty and personal well-being. He would aggressively chase people when he wanted something from them, then become coldly uncaring once he'd gotten his goals. Sally watched Brosnan purposely isolate colleagues by creating private relationships with them while keeping his public image of being friendly and a good colleague to everyone. He was masterful at appearing to be the only one who truly understood or appreciated certain people, then using that fake closeness to get them to obey and be silent. Brosnan was known for making inappropriate advances and comments, using his charm as a weapon to make it impossible for people to refuse without seeming rude or lacking a sense of humor. Sally wrote about his habit of sudden meanness when people didn't do what he expected or return his tricks, with his coldness being all the more shocking because of the nice behavior before. His ability to separate his feelings and deny his own behavior was extraordinary. 13. Gary Sinise, the patriot with no honesty. Gary Sinise created a public image as a real patriot with deep respect for military service and a genuine connection to causes bigger than himself. Someone whose values seemed to be deeply rooted in honesty and meaningful commitment. According to Sally Field's notebooks, however, Sinise used his patriotic image and military connections as a weapon to control situations and get rid of people who questioned his authority or decisions. Sinise was known for using his military associations to create a false sense of moral authority, suggesting that his view on truth and right behavior came from a place of superior understanding. Sally wrote about his habit of publicly supporting military causes while privately tricking colleagues and making decisions that had nothing to do with actual patriotic values and everything to do with his own power and control. Sinise would create loyalty tests disguised as moral commitments, demanding that people prove their values matched his specific worldview. Anyone who failed these tests was subject to public criticism and being professionally ignored. According to Sally, Sinise was very careful about managing his image, ensuring that any behavior that went against his public persona was explained away as being misunderstood or taken out of context. He would surround himself with people who agreed with his perspective, systematically eliminating anyone capable of offering real criticism or different viewpoints. His greatest trick lay in his ability to make people feel they were betraying something sacred when they questioned his motives or actions. 14. Robin Wright, the calculated self-changer. Robin Wright purposely built many different public personalities throughout her career, each one carefully designed to trick people's views and control her image based on what she thought would help her at any given moment. According to Sally Field's observations, Wright was extraordinarily calculating about how people saw her, constantly changing her public story to keep maximum sympathy and support. Sally wrote about Wright's habit of acting like a victim whenever it helped, creating stories about others' meanness or unfairness that were often exaggerated or basically untrue of what actually happened. She was meticulous about controlling information and getting rid of anyone who had details that went against her carefully built stories. Wright would make friends based purely on if it helped. Her career, dumping people the moment they stopped being useful to her image or career advancement. According to Sally, Wright was particularly destructive in how she treated other women, seeing them as competition and systematically undermining their opportunities while pretending to be friends and supporting each other. She used her intelligence and emotional cleverness as a weapon to trick situations in her favor, taking advantage of people's good intentions and desire to believe her carefully made-up stories. Sally watched Wright purposely spread rumors and wrong information about colleagues, planting doubts meant to ruin their credibility and opportunities. Her absolute conviction in the rightness of her perspective made her not care about how her actions affected others. and she had perfected the art of never accepting real responsibility or blame for the harm she caused. And there you have it. These are the carefully written down secrets from Sally Field's private notebooks, showing the darkness that was hiding beneath the glamorous surfaces of 14 of Hollywood's most famous people. Behind the smiles and the award speeches was a reality of tricking, meanness, and taking advantage that shocked even someone as experienced as Sally Field. These secrets force us to think again about everything we thought we knew about these beloved icons, reminding us that the picture shown to the world is often purposefully built to hide rather than show the truth. Sally Field chose to write down these stories not because she was bitter, but because of a deep desire for truth and accountability, believing that the industry and audiences deserve to know what actually went on when the doors were closed. So, what do you think about these secrets? Does learning the truth about these Hollywood figures change how you see their work and what they left behind? Which of these stories shocked you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any more shocking stories about the secrets hidden within Hollywood's most famous families and careers.